Welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking with Dom Passalacqua about connection, culture, and resilience. Dom, wonderful first segment there. Some really interesting viewpoints, and I loved the story there that you told. You did reference culture a few times. Can you elaborate what you meant by culture?
Right. Look, culture, everybody thinks of the word culture and has their own take on that. When I was talking about culture in that instance, I'm talking about First Nations culture, and like I said in my acknowledgement, there's a beauty and depth. The interesting thing about it is that it's different. You can drive however many hundreds of kilometres and drive through three or four countries. And protocols in each country are different, and the culture is a little bit different. Just like when you go through Europe, there's culture. Every time you cross a border, there's a different culture. Yeah, people do things differently because of history and the storytelling that's gone with that. So I think understanding cultural protocols, like a cultural compliance almost, is really important. So when you go to another country, you need to do the right thing. So whatever the protocols are, it's important to find that out first. I mean, you don't go to a country without your passport, right? And you'll always try and find out a few things before you go to another country to try and have a good time in the sense of the holiday. But when you're going through a country, you need to do the right things and be respectful, and talk to the right people and get your passport like a welcome to country. Like I gave an acknowledgement to country, and it has to be named that because I'm not a traditional owner. Only a traditional owner can give a welcome to country. Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you are, and I've been privileged to be welcomed on country by traditional owners in some countries in Australia. Um, and that's amazing, and there's ceremonies, smoking ceremonies, and being welcomed and um, being asked to connect to spirit and culture. And so all those things, the way people do things and what it means to them, and their stories and their mythology, and however you want to look at it or name it, that's the way things happen in that country, and it's different in all these countries. And sometimes it's just understanding their own environment. Like I was on one country, it's northwest, sorry, northeast of Australia, and it's tropical and it's cyclones all the time. And I was sitting
Is that the Darwin area? Or
this is the Gulf of Carpentaria, the Gulf
oh, okay.
area. Yeah. Um, and which is the other side, Darwin, sort of west.
Okay.
Um, Sitting there with an elder, because I was in a health organisation, so I went and sat with people. Just as a side note, Alex, when I first went to community in the clinic, I spent a few days in the clinic and saw nobody until I realised you don't do it this way. So I started walking streets and standing at front gates and talking to people in their front yards, and that was real health. That's how you do it. You get out there. You don't sit in a clinic and wait for people to come to you in remote communities anyway. So I'm sitting with with an elder, and he goes, "When are you leaving?" And I went, "Why, you're trying to get rid of me already?" And he goes, "No, no, when are you leaving?" And I said, "Thursday." And he goes, "Oh, that's good." I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Friday, cyclone." Oh, how do you know that? I mean, I could have because there's reasonable coverage out there in some of these remote communities. I could have got my Bureau of Meteorology app out and had a look. But why would I do that when I've got 60,000 years sitting next to me? And he goes, "Oh, look, the flora's doing this." He didn't use this language, but the flora's doing this, and the fauna's doing that, and the wind's doing this, and the clouds are doing that. They're flying over there, they're walking over there. And I was like, "Oh, okay. And where are you going?" And he goes, "We're going over there because that's where we go and have done for centuries, millennia." And he goes, "And you need to get on the plane." And I said, "Well, how about if I stay here and experience it with you? I can easily do that." And he goes, "Don't be dumb, mate. Get out of here. We know what we're doing." Um, And he was right. It actually happened that way. It wasn't massive, but it came through. They knew what they were doing. They had their stores and they knew what to do from a land perspective, classic conservationists. And it's great. I mean, that's part of culture. You know what's going on. You know what's happening on your country. If I was 500 kilometers away, it would have been different.
Mhm.
If I went south, inner towards, inland, not so cyclonic there, but there might be floods and there'll be a different approach. So one community I was in the wet season, the whole community becomes an island because of the flood. It basically, and it's high community, and then the rains come in, and it basically becomes an island. But they're ready for it. They know what to do. And I wouldn't be anywhere. I wouldn't want to be with anyone else except them in those situations. It was awesome. Um,
That's like, like you mentioned, thousands of years. It's resilience. They've
sure
gone
is.
through all of that before, so they know what to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we come up with business continuity plans and resilience plans, and it's like, man, I don't even want to write one. I'm just going to ask because the answer's there.
Yeah.
You know, the local issues, local solutions. I've heard that in conferences before, and it rings true when you're out there for sure. Another side of culture, though, Alex, is just understanding what goes on. In some cultures, you don't look people in the eye, you don't shake hands, you don't touch heads, or you don't, yeah, whatever it is.
Hmm.
So I was in a situation where I got told a story, and so a young fella stole $20 from his dad's wallet, um, and that's not this culture. Every culture in the world, some young kid does that. Um, and culturally, it was the uncle's job to manage that situation because sometimes the dad might have been too hard or too soft or whatever the reasons for culturally. So the uncle sorts it out. So the uncle's talking to this kid, and um, giving him the hard word. And just at that moment when that's happening, cops drive by and think, oh, a bit of child abuse going on there, not understanding the culture. Yeah. So they pull this guy out, and before you know it, he's arrested for the dumbest reasons because of institutionalized racism. And now this fellow who's doing the right thing by culture is sitting in a jail cell, and now you've robbed that community of a future elder because of some dumb perception of what was going on, and that's stupid. And that's an old story, but these things still happen, not understanding what's going on. I'll just give you another quick one. A doctor tells someone that they see, oh, I need to see your auntie, or, she hasn't come in for ages and she needs a medication. And this guy's like, yeah, 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 and doesn't go tell his auntie because in culture, he's not supposed to tell her that kind of stuff. Someone else is. And then the doctor thinks they're doing their job, but that doctor has to go and find their auntie, do it right, do it through your First Nations liaison officers, go through the cultural protocol. Stop putting your sort of Western frame on everything. It doesn't work. So this is what culture is. This is how I see it. I see it as a bigger picture around it.
It's interesting how you just described that. There's the lack of adaptability and, understanding what's around you when we in the business continuity industry say exactly that. We have to understand what's around us. We have to be adaptable. We have to be fluid. And yet, so many people aren't. And then you end up with those situations that you just described, robbing the community of a learning experience, part of the culture. And it seems to go against some of the things that we're actually saying at the same time.
Yeah, we keep pushing, keep telling. Something my brother said to me years ago, and it still lives with me, is ask and listen, don't talk and tell. Just
Yep.
ask and just listen, man. We keep telling people the way, and it's like, what are you talking about? It's been around for ages, and there's this self-determination we talk about in Australia, and it's talked about in other countries with First Nations people. They know what they're doing. Just let them do it. Far out. We just get in the way because we think our rules are the best rules on the planet, and they're not.
Yeah.
Which leads into connection. You need to connect. You're going to connect with people, connect with cultures, even like when I go to another country. I've been to many Asian countries because I like Asian movement systems and I've studied those. I try to connect on a different level through respect, firstly, and then through trying to understand a few things of the way things happen there. So when I was in the health organization, I had an amazing mentor who was a First Nations man, a doctor. He was a legend, absolute legend, and I was privileged to be working with him. He was my supervisor. I won't name him because he won't want that. But he was a legend. And with him and the team that I was in, we created a clinical governance framework that basically had a cultural lens on it the whole time. Everything we did had culture underlying our clinical processes. So we had to have I mean, you've got to have people who are credentialed and you've got to have quality and governance happening when you've got a medical, organization. You have to do these things through quality standards and accreditation and all that. So there's things you have to do, but doesn't mean you can't put some kind of cultural lens over the top of it. So we had these situations where we had vertical conversations, horizontal conversations, um, and a cultural advisory group that sat over the whole lot. Every single meeting we had to have First Nations representatives in it, and if not, those minutes had to go to the cultural advisory group to make sure that all decisions being made were culturally appropriate. So you put this cultural framework over the top, and now you're connecting with people, you're connecting with culture, you're connecting to country. Um, and even though, me myself, I'm not a First Nations person, it doesn't mean I can't understand and have respect and empathy and compassion for everything else going on. And in the end, it was so beautiful. It was, oh, this is the best way. This is how you get things done.
Mhm.
And then you understand, the community roles and how communities support. It's a community model of health, not um, a Western model of health where the doctor is God almost.
Right.
You've got community understanding what's going on. You've got elders, you've got protocols, you've got this sort of international approach because there's all these countries in Australia, and you have to understand what to do when you're in a particular country, and that's the connection. That's really important. And so culture and connection equals well-being. It's as simple as that. And if you don't do that, you're going to have unhealthy people. You force this model of Western medicine over a community model, and you don't get anywhere.
Yeah, it got me thinking here about community and connection is when we sometimes have, major snowstorm where I am, which happens a lot the last little while, but big snowstorms, it's a community that comes together. And you really
Mhm.
do have to have that connection with your neighbors, with the people on the next block over who happen to have a big snowplow. You have to make those connections to bring people together because they're the ones who are there first when something happens.
Absolutely. Yeah,
They're the ones who are
absolutely.
going to help you. It's going to be, for argument's sake, I'll say 2 days, 3 days before uh, first responders or snowplows get out, or anyone else can come dig you out. Community's right there. So
Yeah.
we need to really take that lesson from the countries and do that ourselves. It's we we can't just wait for something to happen to try and make a connection. Sometimes that's too late.
That's absolutely true. And not only that, sometimes we victims of our own process.
Mhm.
You're the agents of the system, rather than being adaptive around what's happening and asking and listening to what people actually already know, developing some recovery plan. Sometimes it's like, what for? I'm just going to ask and it's just going to appear. So yeah, that's what I see as the connection.
Yeah. I like the culture and connection equals well-being. I like that.
I definitely use that. And when we developed this clinical governance framework with that as the key, it was just so much better to be working with people. And then, you know, my background in health is clinical exercise physiology, and doesn't matter where you are on the planet, selling exercise isn't that easy, you know. And I'd walk around community and, oh, the exercise guy's here. I didn't even have a name. The exercise guy's here. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I know you don't want to exercise, but here's some things that you can do was actually what you're already doing. You just
Yeah.
have to recognize you're already doing and just add a bit.
Yeah. Yep. On that note, we've come to the end of our second segment. We are talking with Dom Passalacqua today about connection, culture, and resilience. We will be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.